As he said, I'm Greg Quinlan. I wear a lot of hats, and we're going to get into those in a minute here. But one of the themes that I have, and I say it all the time, is ex-gay is okay. That doesn't make me anti-gay. That just makes me pro-ex-gay. Okay? All right. That's me. Yeah, that's the better picture. That's the picture I sent to you. And then you wind up with this other picture with all that hair that I don't have anymore. You know, I'm now 51 and I'm getting these parking spaces. And I'm praying God it doesn't become a parking lot. You know, things are happening here. These are some of the hats I wear. PFOX, Parents and Friends of Ex-Gays and Gays. I sit on the board of directors. I'm not the director. I am a director of PFOX. I am the founder and president of Pro Family Network. Our objective is to put a paid Christian lobbyist in every state capital of the country because we are lacking there. Just as much devil goes on in the state capital as it does in the national capitals. Living Free is a ministry that we founded in New Jersey because when I got there to New Jersey, I'm a transplant from Ohio, and I do talk like I'm from New Jersey. So people are really, not that I have the accent, it's just that I talk fast. You ought to do that in a Hispanic church with somebody that talks as fast as this and the translator's standing there ready to hit you. But Living Free is a ministry to help those with same-sex attraction issues. I find out that most of what I'm doing is dealing with teens and parents. I am helping parents peel themselves off the wall when they find out that they have a child in the lifestyle. And we have a parents group. We're not even a year old, and we're going to have to split our parents group up into 2 groups because we've gotten so large. The next thing that I do, and the one that actually pays my salary, is the New Jersey Family Policy Council, where I am the governmental affairs director for New Jersey Family First, which is the legislative action arm of the New Jersey Family Policy Council. I also lobby for PFOX, and I've done a lot of that stuff, and you'll hear more about that later. So that's my mug that makes me look a little bit like O'Reilly, although I am better looking. Next. How I got here. Just to give you some background, I had an abusive father. Now, my dad was Archie Bunker. He was Archie Bunker in every way. I could sue Norman Lear for the rights, but I don't have a lawyer to do that. The only difference between my father and Archie Bunker was Archie Bunker had some mixed up belief in God, and my dad claimed to be an atheist. So my born-again Christian mother marries a non-believer. You know what happens when you do that? You get the devil for a father-in-law. I was sexually molested when I was 10 years old. We started looking at Playboys, you know, porn, that victimless crime. So no, everyone's a victim, and it is a crime. Of course, what we were looking at back then in the 60s is prime time tonight, but to us, when I was a little kid, it was very titillating. It's like, oh, wow, is that what it looks like? Yeah. So anyway, that's what we were doing. And then a boy across the street, who was 13, I was 10, introduced me to sex. And at that moment, I got something I was not getting at home. I was not getting in school, and I was not getting it in the church. I got approval, I got affection, and I got affirmation. Somebody was touching me without hitting me. Somebody was talking to me without screaming at me and calling me names. Somebody made me feel like I had value and worth. So I call it a willing molestation because I went back for more, because I was getting needs met. And besides that, it's sex and it feels good. I was an LPN first. I went to Bible college for a little while, and then I came back and became an LPN, licensed practical nurse, also stands for lousy paid nurse. About the time I came out of the closet in the early to mid 80s, is when the AIDS epidemic was just hitting, but we didn't call it AIDS then, we called it GRID, gay-related infectious disease. That's not very politically correct, so they finally came up with something that was, you know, very PC, and called it AIDS, Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndrome, and they did that before we even had identified the virus or the causation of the disease. So I became a volunteer to these, with the Dayton Area AIDS Task Force in Dayton, Ohio. I watched 100 of my friends and acquaintances die of AIDS before I quit counting. 100. They knew about my Christian background, and they would ask me, Greg, does God hate me? Am I going to hell? Would you read my favorite Bible verse at my funeral? Would you do my eulogy? Would you tell my son and daughter what happened to Daddy? And I did all those things. Pretty rough stuff. Then I became a gay activist. Not because I really wanted to, but the reason why I did this, because the guy I was dating took me to this foo-foo fancy reception of the Human Rights Campaign Fund. And it was, I mean, they had the caviar and all, they had all those nice little fluffy things. It was just really great. I had the caviar and I hated it. That's the nastiest stuff I've ever eaten in my life. And I'll never do it again. I might as well take a whole salt shaker, you know. But when he took me there, I was extremely impressed with this organization. I'll get more into that in a minute. But I became a gay activist, mostly because of the AIDS epidemic. The Human Rights Campaign Fund, the largest gay lesbian political organization in the country, ranks as the 9th largest of all independent political action committees and chiefly responsible for the billions of dollars in AIDS research and support money that comes from the federal government. I still remember the commercial.
Wow.
The Big Pink Plan to make a lavender culture, and they did have this. I became an activist, like I said, with them. They taught me how to read legislation, how to do grassroots activism, how to lobby my elected official. So essentially what the Human Rights Campaign Fund, as it was called then, even had a different logo, essentially what this organization did, taught me how to do, I'm now using for the Lord. So basically what the devil trained me to do, I'm now using for Jesus.
Yes.
Now, but in 1988, I sat at the Park Hyatt Hotel on M Street in Washington, D.C., and I heard this panel discussion. They had a black, Jewish, lesbian attorney there. I mean, the only thing that could have helped her out is she was half Korean or something, but I didn't think she had that. She could have been more PC, I mean, you know. So, and there were several attorneys and lawyers there who were talking about, and other strategists who were talking about what we had to do. Now remember, this is in 1988. I'm going to tell you about a plan that they were telling me about in 1988 that had already existed at least a decade, if not 2 decades, before I got there in the late 80s. They wanted to change the military, redefine marriage, re-educate education, change the church to accommodate homosexuality, and take over corporate America. Change the military. I can't shoot him, he's gorgeous. Anyway, that's the cartoon. You know, the topic is so serious, you do have to laugh. We do have to get a few giggles in. So laugh, snicker a little bit, scratch your head, you know. Why gays shouldn't be allowed in the military, hysterical right-wing reason 373. But I thought that was pretty funny, so we'll move on to that. But don't ask, don't tell. The gays in the military issue. One of the reasons, why did they want to do that so badly? Why do we have to change the military to accommodate homosexuality? Here was the reason, and here was the strategy. The largest organization in government, larger than the education, larger than anything else, is the United States military. If we can win in the military, if we can change the military, we can change everything. Well, they wrote the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy, which was written by Colin Powell. It was also written by a guy named Colonel Ron Ray. Colonel Ron Ray makes a 5-point Calvinist look like a liberal, for those of you that understand the theology of that. But he is also a JAG attorney with the Marines. They sat down and wrote this policy. It is a brilliant policy. More homosexuals have been discharged because of Don't Ask, Don't Tell than were discharged under the previous policy. How about that? So they failed in that objective. Change marriage. I sat there in 1988 before we had the first marriage anything, before we had civil unions, and they went down the list of states to go to make sure that gays got married. And they started with Hawaii, Vermont. They went down the list of what states we should go to. Re-educate education. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where they have won. Not where they are winning, where they have won. They have won the battle here. 1 Peter 5:8 says, "Be sober, be vigilant, for your adversary the devil goes to and fro like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour." Be sober? We haven't been sober. We've been drunk with complacency. Vigilant? Baloney. We've been asleep at the wheel. And when you're drunk and asleep at the wheel, you drive the car in the ditch. We are a nation in the ditch because the church hasn't been the church. We've been asleep. It's an indoctrination center ahead. And that's exactly what's happening. And this afternoon when I give my presentation, you're going to get all the dirty on it. Education and legislation is where they're doing a lot of work. Sex education, health, tolerance, bullying, discrimination. All of this falls under education and legislation. They have taken sex education, they took sex education, the AIDS epidemic, where the church failed, where we had people like Dannemeyer from California saying, we ought to put them on an island somewhere and just let them, you know, have all the sex they want so they can kill each other. Those are the kind of things that were going, Jesse Helms and the like. And the church really did the same thing. This was an opportunity for the church, for believers, for people who believe in God the Creator, should have stepped up to the plate and went to these folks to redeem them, to redeem people who were now with AIDS and all these diseases. They could have done that, but they didn't.